instead of celebrating the miracle that Jesus did. Because of their blindness, right, they're getting even more frustrated, more desperate. And the dilemma had to be resolved. They had to figure this out. So they asked the blind man, well, what do you say about him? It's your eyes that he healed. And in verse 17, the man replied, well, he's a prophet. He's a prophet. They still didn't believe, right? They still didn't believe, verse 18 says, that he had been blind. So they're in this dilemma, this rock versus this hard place, where Jesus healed, but he couldn't be holy because he healed on the Sabbath. And so what they decided was, well, this guy really wasn't blind. This is a whole farce that Jesus kind of created. And so they went down this road of not even believing that the man was born blind. That's why they bring in the parents. Is this your son? Was he blind? Yes, yes, he was born blind. They bring the guy back a second time, verse 24. I want you to see this in the Bible. A second time they summon the man who had been blind, and notice what they say. Give glory to God by telling the truth. What are they saying? Well, one, you've been lying, so give glory to God. They're leveraging their spiritual authority even more. If this guy has an ounce of being a God-fearer, when they say give glory to God by telling the truth, he will kind of come to his senses and go, okay. Give glory to God. And then they go on to say, we know. What do they know? We know this man is a sinner. Why did they know he was a sinner? Because he healed on the Sabbath. Their human external rules were causing them blindness. They couldn't even see the miracles and the glory of God because of their religious place. Give glory to God. Tell the truth. We know that he's a sinner, which is why, and I'm glad when we read through it, some of you started laughing, because the man's testimony amps up. Did you see it? He begins to say, what, you want me? I've already told you once. You want me to tell you again? Are you wanting to be his disciple too? Which infuriates them more. It's like pouring gasoline on the fire. Well, you're this guy's, we're disciples of Moses, right? As they stood a little taller. We know God spoke to Moses. We don't even know where this guy is from. And the guy doesn't relent. That's remarkable, he says. That's crazy. This guy does a miracle. Only someone holy from God can do this. And yet you say you don't know where he's from. To which, this is what, when you give your testimony like that, if you've received hope and healing and grace and forgiveness, and Jesus, what he has done is part of your testimony, it's amazing, regardless of the social pressure, because it would never get more intense than what we see in John 9. Regardless of the social pressure, you have boldness for Jesus because of what you've received and how you've been healed and forgiven. This guy had that kind of boldness to speak to the Pharisees, the religious leaders, the teachers of the law, as nobody had ever spoken to them before, except for maybe Jesus. To speak with that kind of boldness, he says, look, I was blind, but now I see. Why is that? Because you cannot contradict someone's testimony. Doesn't matter the social pressure that we may get under. Your testimony is your testimony, and no one else can say, well, that's not true, that's not right. What do you mean it's not right? It's my story. It's my testimony about what God has done. This guy had that kind of boldness towards the religious leaders who were kicking people out of the synagogue if they claimed Jesus to be the Messiah, which guess what happened? It's exactly what happened to that man. The spiritual blindness and the pride in the Pharisees, it will turn, and maybe you've experienced this before. Maybe you've been this before. Spiritual pride will begin to assault a person's personhood. It'll attack a person's very existence. And that's what they do in verse 34. They said, you're this guy's disciple, and then they said, you were steeped in sin at birth. They're bringing up the past, trying to pin this guy and his identity. That's what spiritual pride will do. It'll attack someone's very personhood. And yet this guy, he'd been healed for real. So he was bold in his testimony for Jesus.